Hello YouTube, welcome back to the second installment of my nutrition videos. The first one was on protein and today's one is going to be on carbohydrates. So what are carbohydrates? In a biological term, they are any food group which contains a carbon atom, two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom. So carbohydrate. CH2O is the biological terms in terms of the scientific definition, or in terms of nutrition, they are any food which contains complex carbohydrate starch such as cereals, breads, pastas, rice, or simple carbohydrates, simple sugars, okay, which will be things like sugar, jams, honeys. The two vary in terms of complex and simple. It's to do with how the body breaks them down and the speed at which they are broken down and utilised for energy. That is the primary role of carbohydrates. It is a fuel source for the body. So the more carbs that you eat, technically the more fuel you will have in order to use and utilise for the body. Where do carbohydrates get a bad rap? Well, if you eat too many of them, then you will get fat. Same as any macronutrient. You eat too much and you don't do enough exercise, you will store excess energy as body fat. That is the basic terms, basic thermodynamics, energy in, energy out. There's lots of other complicated things that can go with it, but let's keep it simple for now. So carbohydrates vary in terms of load and volume when it comes to different foods. So I'm going to take you through a few of those just to give you an idea of different carbohydrates and how they're affected by the body and used as energy. We have carbohydrates, as I said before, which are complex, and they are things like potatoes. Okay, any potato really will have more or less the same carbohydrate source per 100 grams. So for white potatoes, sweet potatoes, you are looking at around 22 to 30 grams of carbohydrates per 100 grams. Obviously, loads of different ways in order to cook and make potato-based dishes: mashed, roasted, obviously cut up and baked in the oven as chips, or just baked as whole in foil as baked potato. So you've got potatoes, you have rice and pastas. Now, per 100 grams of these, they average at around about 75 grams of carbohydrates per 100 gram of dry mass. So if you're measuring out your rice and your pasta and you put 100 grams in a bowl, generally you'll get 75 grams of carbohydrate from it. They are very carb dense. Potatoes per 100 grams are 20 grams, 25 grams of carbohydrate per 100 gram of potato, whereas rice and pastas and cereals, okay, they are all quite carb dense. So you get a lot of carbohydrates for per 100 grams of the food. Oats as well, so another breakfast cereal, per 100 grams of oats you get about 65 grams of carbohydrate, so there again another dense carbohydrate source. Carbs in themselves do not make you inherently fat, okay? The reason why they make people overweight or put on body fat is because they taste so good and people cannot limit the amount that they eat. I.e., if you were to have a bowl of sugary cereal, you would tend to want more of it because it's quite palatable and easy to eat. It releases the feel-good hormones and your body tells you to eat more of it because it makes you feel good. So if you don't weigh and measure food and you just eat by what you see, generally you'll probably overeat on your carbs. Like a bowl of cereal at 30 grams of like Rice Krispies, which are actually the lower sugar cereals. So you can get cereals which contain a very high amount of sugar. They'll be generally higher in carbohydrates. These are just puffed rice with a little bit of sugar added to it. And per 30 gram serving, you're looking at about 26 grams of carbs. Now, a serving of cereal is quite small in size. And as you go into things like mueslis, they will be quite a lot heavier in terms of weight, so you'll get less food for the weight that you're actually eating. So if you eat rice, which is light, you can probably eat a bigger bowl of it for the same amount of calories as a carb dense source of muesli, for example. And these foods generally work by, carbohydrates work by shuttling fuel into your cells. Ideally, they'll fill your liver and your muscle cells first, because those two are what provide you with usable energy for exercise and just day-to-day tasks. Once they are filled though, and your body looks to push nutrients into cells, if the muscle cells and the liver cells, liver glycogen is full, then it will have to store the excess as body fat. This is where the problem occurs. Now, if you're constantly eating very high carbohydrates, what you will do is release insulin. Okay, now insulin, you have to think of it as a key to unlock the door to your cells. Now, as I said before, it looks to push the energy, the carbs and the proteins towards your muscles and your liver first, because that is the place at which your body will need usable energy. Once they are filled though, your body will then have to store the excess as fat, because there's nowhere else for it to go. This is in very simple terms. But if you are constantly eating very high carbohydrates throughout the day, you'll be constantly releasing insulin and it'll be looking to push nutrients into the cells. Now, if you're not working out, then that energy will have to be stored as body fat, because you're not going to be using it. The body is clever by, if you've got an excess of energy, it will store it because it doesn't know when you're next going to be eating. But if you're constantly filling carbohydrates throughout the day, overeating on them, and you're not moving and you're not using them, then you will generally tend to put body fat on quicker. This is why carbohydrates are deemed as a demon within nutrition, because people tend to overeat them and they put on body fat quicker. Not because they are inherently bad, and if you eat carbs, you will put on fat. It's just if you eat too much of that nutrient, of that carbohydrate, then you'll put yourself at a risk to put on more weight and store more as body fat. If you have a higher muscle mass, you tend to be able to get away with eating a higher carbohydrate diet, because muscle needs fuel and carbohydrates will push more nutrients to muscle mass. So that's why we always tend to want people to lose weight by doing weight training, because it gets your body at a heightened state of readiness to receive those carbohydrates and actually utilize them as fuel for repairing muscle, rebuilding muscle, and obviously doing day-to-day tasks and exercise, as I've said. If you are just exercising by doing lots of cardiovascular work, i.e. you're an endurance runner, you can eat a lot of carbohydrates because it's just calories and you need them for fuel, but you won't have tend not to have a large muscle mass if you don't lift weights alongside your endurance activities. So if you're just a runner who runs all the time, yeah, you can get away with eating a lot of carbohydrates, you need it for fuel, but you will probably look what's known as skinny fat, i.e. you have a very small amount of muscle mass, yet you're not conditioned in your appearance. You don't have a six-pack, you don't have like big legs, big arms, because you're pretty much running all of the fuel that you eat off. That's another video for another time. Anyway, let's get back to carbohydrates. So we have carbohydrates such as I said before, potatoes, cereals, oats, pastas, which are complex carbohydrates. They require the body to break them down at a slower rate. Things especially like potatoes and oats are known as low glycemic index carbohydrates, and they will be broken down at a slower rate by the body, and they will also release or increase your blood sugar at a slower rate. Things like actual table sugar, okay, honeys, candies, okay, they will push blood sugar levels up very quickly because they are simple carbohydrates. It doesn't take a long time for the body to utilize, break them down and use them as fuel, so you spike blood sugar levels really quickly when you eat things like that. Now if you are constantly, as I said before, eating very, very highly refined foods like candies, chocolates, cakes, sugars in your coffee, honey on everything, jam on your toast, then you will constantly be spiking blood sugar level really quickly, and the come down that you'll get from that will mean that you'll probably be hungry quite often, because your body will break the food down, it will spike blood sugar, and then once your blood sugar starts to crash or go below normal, you'll probably be hungry for more of those to bring it back up to a normal level. So eating things which are lower in refined carbohydrates, as I said before, like oats, and potatoes and vegetables and fruits will help you to maintain a steadier level of blood sugar, stop you getting so hungry, and actually utilize the fuel better for, as I said before, working out and just getting through day-to-day tasks without crashing and feeling like rubbish. So carbohydrates are easy to eat, as I said before. They're easy to overeat, so you've got to monitor how much that you eat day to day, and do that by weighing your food and actually knowing what you're consuming. Lots of people tend to overeat carbohydrates, undereat on protein, and are you right there, Brooke? You want to go out? Good boy. Back to it. So as I said before, yeah, so people tend to overeat carbohydrates because they are easy to overeat. So monitor what you're eating, measure what you're eating, make sure that you are eating things which give you energy, which provide you with energy, but don't cause you to want more and more and more and get you really hungry throughout the day and make you overeat on your calories as a whole, because that will be bad for your body image and be bad for your body composition. The best way to monitor is to measure, and the best way to find out how many carbs you can eat and without putting on body fat is to find out how many carbs you're eating at that exact moment in time, and then either reduce the amount that you're eating if you're looking to lose body fat, or if you're looking to put muscle mass on and your condition is pretty good, you're quite lean already, look to increase the amount of carbohydrates that you're eating. You need to make sure that you are eating enough to sustain optimal functioning of the body and increasing muscle mass without you getting fat. That is the main goal of a diet. It's to increase the amount of calories to provide you with energy to do more without putting on unwanted weight, body fat. So the only way that you're going to know how much you should eat is by measuring everything and monitoring that. You eat too much, regress the amount of food that you're eating. If you can eat more without putting on unwanted body fat, then increase the amount of food that you're eating. Keep protein constant. Have a look at the protein video I did before this one, and that will give you a clear indication of what to eat for protein, but keep that number constant, and then you can manipulate carbohydrates depending upon where you are in your goals, what you want to achieve, and how you're achieving it. Remember, foods high in carbohydrates spike blood sugar levels. That's what they're there to do in order to shuttle nutrients to cells, muscles, and that will be to rebuild muscle, to provide fuel for your muscles to actually do exercise. If you eat too many carbohydrates, you will put body fat on because you are overeating your daily calories, not because carbohydrates are inherently bad. That being said, if you're already grossly overweight, you will not need as many carbohydrates as someone who is leaner, because you have fuel around your body in fat that you can utilize already for energy. If you are thinking that because you weigh 300 pounds you can get away with eating more carbohydrates, it's probably the opposite. You have already got a fuel source surrounding your body that you can utilize for fuel, for exercise and day-to-day living. That is the time to have a lower carb diet, because of all of the things which carbohydrates bring with them, drawing in water, storing water weight, and as I said before, you overeat on them, you will store body fat. They are also, if you're dieting to lose body fat, very easy to overeat because they taste delicious. So if you're looking to drop body fat, really monitor what carbohydrates you eat, because if you are one of those people who loves sweet things but it makes you overeat on them, then you probably need to reassess the carbohydrate source that you are eating. Look for more natural sources like oats, like fruits, okay? They will fill you up without putting on a huge amount of carbohydrates to your day-to-day diet, and therefore lower your carb sources. Vegetables, things like peppers, cucumbers, mushrooms, green beans, anything green really, they will be lower in carbohydrates, very low. High in fiber, which will fill you up and make you feel awesome because you're getting micronutrients with it. The root vegetables, like I said before, potatoes, okay, and carrots, swede, butternut squash. Root vegetables are generally higher in carbohydrates than things like peppers, onions, tomatoes, cucumbers, okay, so utilize root vegetables as a fuel source of carbohydrates. Utilize vegetables that are lower in carbohydrates as a way to get micronutrients in, but also a way to fill you up. They are your best friend if you're looking to lose body fat. Stay away from the sugary carbohydrates if you're looking to lose body fat, because they're very easy to overeat. They won't inherently make you fatter, but if you overeat on them, you are overeating on your daily calories. It will be detrimental to your goal of losing body fat. So just monitor things. Also, things like ketchups and mustards and H3 brown sauces, any sort of condiment, read the ingredients, read how many carbs are actually in them. Because if you're adding these to your day-to-day dishes and you're eating 3 to 4, even 5 meals a day where you're adding sauce to it, you could be adding an additional 20 grams of carbohydrate to that. Same with things like soups and baked beans. Both of these per tin have got over 30 grams of carbohydrates in them. Okay, that's soup and that's baked beans. 30 grams of carbohydrates in one tin, which you might think are actually really, really good for you, can actually push you over your day-to-day calories. Yes, they're lower in calories overall, but if you're using this, not getting filled up and then eating more anyway, then get rid of things like this and eat, as I said before, things that are going to fill you up. Vegetables, oats, potatoes, they are lower in carbohydrates per 100 grams, which means you can eat bigger volume of them without putting in extra calories. Rice cakes as well, they're a good way to get carbs in to your diet without bursting your carbohydrate source. So per rice cake you're looking at about 5 grams of carbs. So having a load of these instead of a portion of rice might fill you up more, okay, again without pushing carbohydrates too high. If you eat foods to fill you up without overdoing your daily calories, that is the main aim of dieting. Okay, putting on muscle mass is completely opposite. You're looking to get foods in which are lower in volume to allow you to eat more and stay in a surplus. If you are in a calorie deficit to lose body fat, then eat foods higher in volume but lower in calorie. Vegetables, squash, butternut squash, pumpkin, things like that, potatoes, they are lower in overall calories per 100 gram, therefore you can eat more of them without taking in as many calories as, say for example, pastas, rices, honeys, all these little things which include extra carbohydrates that you do not need in your diet if you are looking to reduce body fat. Does it mean you can't eat things like candies and things like flavoured rice cakes, which taste awesome and amazing? You can, if you can control it. If you can have a portion of candy or a portion of a few, like a chocolate bar, without eating, a couple of squares of chocolate without eating the whole bar, then you can include them in your diet. However, if you do not have the restraint to stop at 1 or 2 pieces and you eat the entire bar, then I would probably say get them out of your diet in the first place. What you don't see, you don't want. So if it's not in your face and not in your house, you won't eat it because you can't. Okay? So if you're one of these people who's struggling to lose weight, yet you've got all these temptations around which make you overeat because you see it in the cupboard and you eat it and you don't track it, and therefore go over your calories by 300 a day, then you probably want to rethink things, go back to basics, eat your vegetables, eat your higher volume foods that are lower in calories, eat your fruits, and you'll be filled up. So you'll be full without bursting the seams of your calorie count. So carbs as a whole, do they make you fat? No, if you control them, if you monitor them, if you measure them. That's what it goes back to at the end of the day. If you can control what you're putting in your mouth and you can measure what you're putting in your mouth and you don't go over your set amount of calories to reach your goal and you're chipping away at body fat each week, then you can include whatever you want in your diet to a certain point. But nutrient density is key. It will make you feel full, it will make you perform better in the gym, so your workout will be better, which means that your volume of calorie output will be better, and overall you'll just feel better for it because they are nutrient containing foods, they have micronutrients in them which make you feel amazing. So carbs, eat them, just make sure you eat enough for fuel and you don't overeat them. Okay, if anyone's got any questions on anything I covered today, then please shoot me a message. Just make sure you read food labels. Carbs are in pretty much all foods that are not like meats and fishes, okay, and eggs and things like that. So protein heavy foods, they won't contain high amounts of carbohydrates, but when you go to things like grains, cereals, bars, as I said before, like sweets and stuff like that, even soups, just read the label. Some have higher carbohydrate contents than others because food companies will push sugars into them in order to make them taste better and more palatable. They don't care about your health, they care about the taste of their food. So just read labels, make sure you know what you're eating, monitor it, measure it, and then adjust as and when you need to with regards to your own goals. Hope you found this useful. Fats video will be coming to give you a few ideas of what to include in your diet for fats, but to round up carbs, eat carb sources that are natural. Oats are a really good way to do it. Potatoes, root vegetables like pumpkin, butternut, squash. Eat your vegetables. Include a few fruits because they'll fill you up without being calorie dense. Look out for things that are easy to put extra carbs in. Honeys, jams, syrups. Monitor bad carbs. I'm not even going to use that actually. Monitor carbohydrate dense foods that are refined, like candies, chocolates, and breakfast cereals. Make sure you don't overeat on them, and you will achieve the body composition that you desire. The more muscle mass you have, the more carbs generally you can get away with eating. The more body fat you have, generally lower the amount of carbs that you're eating because you already have a fuel source there to tap into. Any questions, let me know, but I hope you enjoyed this video and check in for the fat video.